Amy Cloud. I'm the Executive Director of the Jessamine County Chamber of Commerce. For those of you who don't know, we are certainly excited for you all to join us for our monthly luncheon. As I mentioned earlier, we appreciate Sam's Club for sponsoring our luncheon today. They are truly champions of our chamber, and anytime we have an event, they're one of the first people that we call. So we thank them for all their support they give our chamber. Before we allow them to talk and introduce our speaker, as customary, we will go around the room and please introduce yourself and what company you represent. This is the networking part of our luncheon. So if there's any one sentence you need to say about your business that you need to share with us, you can take that time as well. We are using microphones today, so if you please speak clearly into the microphone so it can be recorded for our video. We'll start over here with a guest.
My name is Claudette Colombe. I own a UPS store in Harriman, Tennessee. I'm up here visiting Bruce Jones, who has 4 UPS stores in the Lexington area.
Good morning, Bruce Jones with the UPS store, and just want to say thank you to everyone. We've just really in the last 6 months gotten really involved with the chamber and just have appreciated all the warm welcome that we've received. So thank you.
Kathy Lowe, Central Bank, and a chamber ambassador.
Myrna Spratt with the chamber.
Sam Lee with First Southern National Bank.
Dave Carlstead with the City of Wilmore and a Chamber Board member.
Bill Hall, Bluegrass Energy, and a Chamber Board member.
Steve Martin with Toyota Nicholasville, here to keep Nicholasville moving.
Heather Reynolds, Jessamine County Public Library Community Relations.
Matt Cannell, I'm the operations manager at Jessamine County Public Library. They told me if a disaster happened, I was responsible. So.
I'm Christopher Horn with Horn Engineering.
Hi, I'm Bert Grayson with Gullett & Grayson Law Firm. 60 years worth of law firm in downtown Nicholasville, and I am a chamber ambassador.
If you ever took speech in school, you know you're supposed to stand up. I'm Donna Seaborn, and I'm with the Joseph Group, and I'm also an ambassador.
Did take speech in college, failed it miserably. I'm John Cootie, Cambridge Insurance, and I'm also a chamber ambassador.
Hi, I'm Aaron Coleman. I'm with ServPro of Nicholasville, Versailles, and Danville.
Did we get you? Larry Princeton, Meridian Star Merchant Services, and a chamber ambassador.
Behind the camera is Dennis Smith with D. Smith Media.
Hi, I'm Mary Struckoff. I am with Culver's. We are having our groundbreaking tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock on North Main Street, and we hope to open in March.
I am Paula Perdue. I am with Jerry Polvino at Edward Jones in Nicholasville.
Hi, I'm Linda Withers. I'm with Tatro Capital. We're right off of Main Street behind CVS. I work for Quint Tatro, who's the financial advisor.
Hi, I'm Andrea Brown with the Jessamine County Health Department.
I'm Kelly Smotherman. I'm with the Jessamine County YMCA, and we're off of Maple Street.
Hi, I'm Ron Bischoff. I'm with Habitat for Humanity of Jessamine County and with The Mountain, which is a new community and Christian learning center that's opening sometime in December on East Oak Street, apparently right behind CVS also.
Hello, I'm Rachel Ramey with Hospice of the Bluegrass.
Dr. Heather Fisher with Cairo One of Nicholasville.
I'm Stephanie Medette, licensed massage therapist in Wilmer, Kentucky, and personal yoga instructor.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Quillen. I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones here in Nicholasville.
Hello, I'm Nikki Carmichael with St. Joseph Jessamine.
I'm Dan Andrews. I'm with St. Joseph Jessamine as well.
Russ Meyer with City of Nicholasville.
Hi, I'm Julie Neff, and I have Country Cutting Up. If you find yourself having a bad hair day, come to my salon, and we'll see if we can't remedy that situation. So just want to welcome everybody. I'm located on the bypass in the Save-A-Lot building, so come see me sometime.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jonathan Wilk with Floor Coverings International, located on Elizabeth Street.
Hello, I'm Brandon from Sam's Club. I'll take this opportunity to introduce our new general manager. A lot of you know Ryan. He moved back home. He's in Altoona, Pennsylvania now. Carla comes to us as a GM. She's got 18 years of experience with the company with a variety of experiences and has family in the area. Her husband's from Eastern Kentucky. And you want to say anything else about yourself?
Just welcome everybody. I'm just like trying to get used to being here, and it still hasn't even sunk in that I'm here. So I'm just kind of waiting for that to happen. But thank you all for being here.
Hi, my name is Sandra Redmond, and I'm the membership team lead here at Sam's Club.
Jay Anderson, I'm the membership manager here at Sam's Club.
Hello, I am Rhonda May with All God's Children, and I have a great opportunity for each one of you all. We are selling raffle tickets for $1,000, so please see me afterwards because I know everybody needs one.
The tickets are $25 a piece, though, not $1,000.
That is a good deal, $25
Good
to
ROI.
win $1,000. So be sure and see me.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Short with First Southern National Bank and also a Chamber Ambassador.
Okay, Brandon, if you want to come forward and introduce our speaker.
Thank you.
You can use it or not.
All right. We're excited to have everybody here. We love hosting these events. And I'll take a minute to do some marketing. Next week is Thanksgiving, right? So we have Black Friday sales starting at 7 a.m. here at Sam's Club. We'll be open. This year we're doing something totally different. If you're a Plus member, you've already received an invitation. If you're not a Plus member, stop by today and we'll explain that to you. But we're having a VIP event after hours this coming Sunday night. So it's going to be doorbuster Black Friday type sales from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Sunday night. So you'll get an early start on that. Today we have Michael Ashcraft with us from the SBA. He's been with SBDC in Louisville and with the SBA now for 2 years. He's a UK graduate, 2 kids, and a cat named Jackson. So let's give him a round of applause.
Great memory. I'll use my indoor voice on this one. I do appreciate the opportunity to be here today. When I was talking with Amy, kind of karma, the first time we sat down to talk, it was about a month after the tornado that hit West Liberty and Salyersville. And one of the things that I brought up was disaster prep and recovery, not knowing how it would strike such a chord with her. And we were just talking about what was going on with Sandy, Hurricane Sandy up in the Northeast. And I guess the issues are this, that everybody thinks it's one of those things that will happen to someone else until it happens to you. And I'll talk a little bit about what to do, more importantly, in the preparation before it happens as opposed to after the fact, because there's some pretty scary statistics about how that affects not just people, but those businesses and people's livelihoods. And we realize every time a major disaster happens across the country how fragile we really are, now more so than 50 years ago, certainly in many respects more so than 100 years ago, and it's sort of ironic. But we're so tied to energy, technology, communications now that all relies on electricity or the power grid and all the other issues that collapse literally overnight. And it's hard to believe that some of those folks up in the Northeast, 2 weeks plus, and they're still just trying to get power back on, trying to rebuild their lives, and it's months and months. And of course you saw it firsthand months ago with what happened in Eastern Kentucky and how they're still trying to recover from that. I do want to thank Amy and the Chamber for allowing me to come here today and talk about this. I've got several handouts. There's actually 3, and everybody should have a copy of it on their table there. One is the booklet. I'll refer to this, and this is a real good checklist. It's a whole series, in fact, of checklists For you, whether you're an individual just trying to prepare for what could happen in your home, whether you're a business, whether you're a nonprofit organization, everybody can benefit from being prepared. So that is one thing you have. I made up, to go along with that checklist, kind of an index of what's what throughout the book. So you can get a sense, and I'll refer to that as we kind of walk through the presentation. And by the way, if you got any questions, and you can ask right then and there, it won't bother me at all, and there'll still be time, to, I believe, for some Q&A at the end. But anyway, the SBA is part of that overall umbrella of small business services. It ties very well with most chambers of commerce across the country, and it mentions the Jessamine County Chamber's mission is to advance the prosperity and well-being of the business community, particularly its members, with the goal of improving the quality of life in our community. Well, SBA's goal is to help small businesses start, grow, and succeed. And that ties very well with what goes on within chambers across the country. This is one of those topics that's kind of like saying, hi, I'm Michael Ashcraft. I'm here to talk to you about your funeral preparation. Those are the kind of things most people don't want to think about when it comes to disaster prep and recovery. But the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety is the organization, nationwide organization, that put this together. And then the SBA, and here locally, the Small Business Development Center out of Lexington, in this part of the state, really believe in the importance of trying to get the message out. I don't think it's that people don't want to prepare, it's that they don't have the right tools and don't really think about it until it happens to them. So this is a great way for you to just, again, whether it's for personal or business or any kind of organization you're affiliated with, to get ready if the worst happens. There's the obligatory legalese there, that's to keep the attorneys happy. So let's get right into that what-if scenario. What if this happens? And a prime example, I just saw this. I'm out of Louisville. Our state office is there. And there was a train derailment several weeks ago. And this is the second time in 2 weeks that people have had to leave their house for days on end. So these are kinds of situations, a lot of times when people hear disaster, they think immediately natural disaster. They don't think about the much more frequent man-made or human-caused disasters that are out there. And I guess the questions are, you know, could you, if this were to happen to you in an instant, could you contact your employees? Could you contact your suppliers? Could you contact your customers if you needed to? And one of the more important things, as I'll talk about later, is making sure that you control the message. If a disaster happens, you are in control of the message, and that message could be no message, which is a bad message for people. They want to know, are you up and running? Are you in business? Can you contact your employees? You know, it used to be, well, they had a landline, they had a phone number, you know, and that was it. Now you're thinking about a lot of people don't have landlines. Relying on email is not always reliable in a disaster. Sometimes that goes down for days or weeks. Cell phones, people change their cell phone numbers. They change their plans. So that's something else that sort of takes constant vigilance. And these are the kind of things that people rifle through the old files if they can find them, if it wasn't blown away in a disaster or went up in the fire. Then they're trying to figure out, is this a current one or is this an old number? And they unfortunately don't know how to reach people and many times in these situations. So number one is to try and set up a communications plan. And then also, what happens to all that equipment I rely on, the computer that may go down or gets drowned in the flood because the creek behind my building rose because of the torrential downpour, and all of a sudden all of that stuff is fried or it's caked in mud. Or what happens if you lose other equipment? I was talking with Amy earlier about the fact that things like membership list and sales records and all those kinds of things, kind of scary if you think about, well, do we have a backup? If so, where is it? Is it a paper backup? Is it in the same building? You know, those are the kind of things that can get businesses and other organizations in big trouble really fast. And anytime you go through any kind of disaster, if it's a business or another organization, it's going to impact you. It's just a matter of how you can mitigate that. It's going to cost you in sales. It's going to cost you in other ways, perhaps. So what you want to do is be prepared ahead of time to ensure that it doesn't cost dearly. So those are just some of the things that can impact a business. And basically, what's paramount is protecting people, whether those are your employees or perhaps somebody who happens to be in the building when some disaster hits at that point, whether it's a visitor or a vendor or whoever it might be. Another thing is to kind of prioritize. Well, you know, next week, if something were to strike our particular, whether it's our particular business or our entire community, we can't get back on track with everything immediately, so we'll have to prioritize. We can't do everything next week, the day after a disaster, but can we do the most important thing or things, whatever that might be? And that's for you to decide what those are and kind of bring things back online over time. And this workbook will help you kind of identify yourselves what those most important things are that are crucial to the operation of the organization. Again, whether it's a business, a nonprofit, whatever it might be. And then to be able to minimize that downtime, to protect the reputation you have, and to get back on track as quickly as possible. Because a lot of people, if you're running any kind of organization, you know people are counting on you. They need a paycheck. If it's employees, they need a sense of day-to-day activities. If their particular situation wasn't impacted as much or more so than what the business was or the other organization where they might work. And then also other people are counting on you. There's legal obligations, there's other things, you know, if you've got contracts, if you've got rent that you have to pay and things of that nature. And that's where lots of times organizations really get in deep trouble real fast. So it takes a commitment by whoever the leaders are of the organization. Those folks have to sit down and decide, besides myself or ourselves as a key management, or maybe I'm a one-person operation, but I've got other people counting on me, how can I budget for this? How can I figure out what I'm going to need to do to prepare? Because there could be some costs that you have to do up front, like a redundancy for your computer, whether it's having things outside of your particular office space where you back up your important files. Simple things that can be done, but a lot of times even the backup plan runs into trouble, and I'll share a couple of those stories with you later. And then getting other people, if you have employees working with you, to make sure, A, they buy in, and B, that they're part of that implementation of a plan, a recovery plan. So that's really important. This slide here in your handout there, it shows all these slides, but this one in particular, sort of, when I first saw it, it's like, that almost looks like a blank check or something. I was trying to figure out what they were trying to communicate at first, and I realized really it's all about the timing and the timeline going across there. Basically, it's trying to separate the pre-planning process from after the fact. You can't control if a disaster happens. But what you can control is how you react to that and how you recover from that. So this kind of shows the really crucial things that you can do. What you are in control of is that preparation piece and implementation of that plan. So that's just giving you kind of an idea that can go out into days, weeks, or in some cases months, trying to recover from these situations. So number one is thinking about that planning process for you, the pre-disaster situation and what you have to do. What are those threats? What are those issues? And there's some really good things in one of the first pages of the workbook that talks about that. That's actually on page 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, those kind of talk about some of the things that you need to do. There's an assessment actually on page 2. And then kind of what do I do to kind of reduce the impact on pages 3 through 6 that kind of go through that whole process, because a lot of times it just takes reading a little bit of information and thinking about how's that relevant to me? How can it impact us? And what can we do to try and make it less of a disaster, post-disaster? So thinking about what you have to do to recover from the business, just lots of little tips and suggestions that are posed in the book. But those first 3 or 4 pages in this workbook are really good to kind of get your thought process going, and maybe you sit down with some other key folks and think about what are some of the issues, what are some of the major problems that we have to deal with if this were to occur. So this is actually that first true step: identify what the risks are. what those are. And this really drives home the point. They've got a grid with 8 different boxes: natural disasters, political issues, human-caused disasters, technological, and that happens extremely frequently now with meltdowns. I was talking to a woman who had she actually is a tax preparer. She had about 400 clients. She was transferring. She had it all, everything, all of her records on one computer, knew how dangerous that was. This past spring decided to get a backup hard drive. Good idea. Gets the hard drive, plugs it in, starts transferring the data. The hard drive has a flaw in it, causes a fire, literally melts, and loses probably 3/4 of the records that she had. And she is stuck now trying to rebuild she's told me, over 3 years worth of tax returns, almost 300 clients in various stages of lost data. Serious stuff. And she's got to redo all that at, of course, no charge to the clients. She's got to eat all of that. Lesson learned hard for her, but here she was thinking about trying to deal with the potential technological issue, and that actually the technology caused the disaster. Some other things to think about. One of the bullet points there, high absenteeism, and a lot of times people are like, what exactly does that mean? Well, if you have either a situation where you have employees that can't come back to work after the fact because A, you can't communicate with them that you're back in business or back online, so to speak, or they've been impacted and you don't know how critical it is for them. They may or may not even be within the community. They may be 50 or 200 or 500 miles away because they've got relatives or friends or somebody that'll help take care of them, and you don't know how to communicate to them, and vice versa. And a lot of times assumptions grow out of that they don't think you're back in business and you don't think they're interested in coming back to work. I've heard some of those kinds of stories, and you get a real disconnect, and it's raw emotion going on a lot of times with people, particularly if their home has been hit as well as a business, because it just crushes their life, just like it does to the owners of the business. So thinking about some of these types of issues, building specific problems, we'll talk a little bit about that, but this is a really scary thing. And this is numbers that I made up. This is from the Insurance Institute. They say that at least 25% of all businesses that go through a disaster never reopen, never recover. And they know that's low, because they said they only keep those records for 2 years after a disaster occurs, and that many businesses that try and recover just slowly sputter along, and they've been hurt so severely that they eventually, after 3 or 4 years perhaps, end up closing. So they know it's much higher than 25% of businesses within any particular disaster area on a widespread case that never reopen. So that's some sobering thought there for people to consider. So, again, what can happen? It's not just natural disasters. If you're in a particular geographic location, say, for instance, close to that flood-prone river, maybe it's a situation where the building, and you don't think about this, but you have an extremely severe thunderstorm, and you've had some leaks in your roof, and all of a sudden you come one morning after a particularly bad night of rain and find that all of that has come down on your office, and everything within that office is ruined. So those are kind of things you don't want to have happen to you. I've talked with some people that have had some inside the building kinds of issues. Last winter, somebody I was talking to in another area of the state, frozen pipes. Guess what happened? Boom. So you just never know. And they've been renting that location, I think they said, for over 12 years. Even during the ice storms. This is in western Kentucky, and even during the ice storm, they never had a real issue with that. But this time, for whatever reason, the pipes burst. They sprayed water all over the entire office area, and it really hurt them tremendously. Something else, and this happened to me personally back in the early 90s. My wife and I started a business, and we had a retail business, and we counted on, this going into the holiday season, and we had one key supplier who was about 65-70% of our revenue, and that supplier in upstate New York had a fire early October. All the inventory we counted on through the holidays literally went up in flames, and it was bad for them, and we're thinking we're not going to have anything to sell. So fortunately we had some backup suppliers which was good. They weren't nearly, the product they had didn't sell nearly as well, but we had something. And a lot of times people, consider only having one vendor because the value of that relationship of giving all your business to them and vice versa and getting to know them. But there's a flip side to that too. So thinking about that and talking to your key suppliers, asking, do they have a disaster plan in place? What would happen? This particular supplier, fortunately, they talked it would take over 6 months to recover from the fire, but they were able to rent some space and get back online in about 3 weeks. So we were way behind, but we ended up getting most of the product we had originally ordered. We were just fortunate that they were able to work that out. They didn't have a plan. They just were able to kind of scramble and get that done. Again, I've mentioned this or alluded to it over and over, data storage and backup. Thinking about things, for instance, like not just putting your key files on a flash drive and then locking it into your file cabinet at the office. Maybe you don't keep things together. Separate buildings. One of the suggestions is to copy it either on flash drives and or burn it on CDs. Don't put it in your house that's 3 miles from your business or where you might work. You might want to put it 50 miles away at a relative's because odds are they won't get impacted, as well. So sometimes people don't think about that. Another thing, I heard some stories about people in West Liberty. They put a lot of their important paperwork and things that were really valuable to them in their bank, which got hit too by the tornadoes, and that was wiped out. So thinking, number one, do you have access to it? Number two, even if you do have access to it at some point, is it still there? Is it still legible, readable? Is it something you can access or not? So have multiple redundancy backup plans for all types of situations that could happen. And again, the workbook does a great job of helping you think about that. That last bullet about standard company procedures, that's kind of referring to things like, do you have emergency inventory if your key suppliers were cut off? If not, could you get that from somebody else? Also, do you have a way to cross-train if some key person, something happened to that person who you count on to help you run the day-to-day operations? Or maybe you are that person, and if you haven't cross-trained others, again, that's a danger point oftentimes for people in their organizations. Having one person who knows that, nobody else does, and then you can get into some real problems if you've got several key people who can't come back to work. Next thing, put those controls in place. Again, thinking about what you can do to reduce the risk and the loss of data. And here's something else. If you can't go back to work because work is no longer there or it's impossible to work, talk about disaster. I'm not sure if my battery just went out. It should not have. But I'll tell you what, Brandon, I've got a cord here. Yeah, let me get that out. I think right in there. Okay, thanks. So anyway, you may want to grab the PowerPoints there, and hopefully we'll get back online with this in a minute. That wasn't planned, by the way, but it does drive home the point. So anyway, thinking about it, one of the things is transferring a risk. That's one of the bullet points there. And what that means is having enough insurance. Many people assume that, their business insurance, homeowners insurance, that sort of thing covers in case of a flood. And we heard lots of stories, at least I did, in the Northeast about people assuming that flood insurance would kick in, and then they didn't realize till after the fact. That's a separate policy. That's through, federal government sets that up, and people who thought they were going to be covered had no coverage and are losing thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars in some situations. So real problems there. So just again, an opportunity for you to take a look at your insurance. Is it enough coverage? You may not have enough. It might have been years ago that you had the policy drawn up, and it may not replace everything now. Thinking about things like all of your technical equipment that you have and the depreciation of that. Within 2 years, all of your computers are virtually worthless. Well, what happens? Is it replace that equipment? Does your policy include a replacement of that equipment? or what is the current value of that equipment, which is usually zero or very, very little amount. So again, this is why many people don't recover from those disasters. It wipes out their bank account literally overnight because they don't have enough cash to get up and running again. So one of the other things, and this is number 4 there on those steps, is the importance of protecting others' lives. And this is where things like if you have a, oh, okay. Bear with me for just a moment here. Thank you. Here we go. Quick recovery on that disaster, huh? So anyway, in talking about protecting other people, I never thought about this, and I was sharing with Brandon and Jay. I spent 20 years in retailing. That's what my prior career was, and I never thought about things with all the suppliers coming and going and all the other guests within the building. We didn't have any kind of sign-in, sign-out procedures. I do where I work now, but I never really thought about the importance of that, and that's one of those things you don't know until you need it. In other words, do you get everybody out safely if there is some kind of a disaster? Do you have a place where everybody is supposed to go and meet? How do you account for everyone? Well, so-and-so was there this morning. Are they in the building still? Did they go to a meeting earlier? What's going on? So thinking about, just simple communication. And then kind of all those things after you ensure that people are safe. Then, trying to get through the situation of, is the building safe to go back in again? What are you going to do to try and assess the damage? What has been damaged? And that's a big issue going on, again, in the Northeast now, is that many homeowners can't get anybody to come in and verify whether their furnace and their electrical systems and all the other infrastructure is safe to operate and use or not. And even if it is, they might have had so much water damage that it's moldy and they can't get into their own home anyway. So really, things that you don't usually think about until it happens to you, and what would you do in that situation, whether it's a building where you work or a place where you live. Then in that last bullet about, again, the communication piece, making sure you know how to reach all those key people and they know how to reach you. It can be something like a phone tree that you get set up. It could simply be, I've got everybody's current phone numbers and I put it, shrink it down and put it in my purse or wallet or wherever where I can reach them. Don't assume, too, that cell phone's going to work, because guess what? It might ring, but they don't answer because they don't have electricity. So thinking about, how can I reach them in an emergency? Is there another way? Is there another number? Is there another person who can communicate to them if need be? Again, the checklist help you with all those kinds of considerations. So assuming that you get through the incident, then what? How can you say, yes, we're open? This is some of the things that, let's see what those pages are. I believe on pages 7 and 8, and 7 and 8 of the workbook talks about your key people, suppliers, all of that. A very simple form. You can copy it or you can download it, and it has within the workbook where you can go and download all these forms. So you can have a paper copy or you can keep it electronically updated, whatever. Just if you've got copies of it, whether it's electronic or whatever, or in your file, a hanging file folder, just make sure that you have multiple different ways to access that information. So in addition to the employees, suppliers, and other customers, thinking about then what do we do? And I talked earlier about those critical business functions. You can't, in many cases, offer everything that you did before a disaster. So you got to think about what it is that we're going to do first. What is most important? What do people expect from us? And then, having those critical phone numbers. And another thing, critical supplies, that could be everything from an emergency first aid kit that you have, or several first aid kits throughout the office area in the building where you might need to access it at a moment's notice, or also backups in terms of inventory that you might need. Some people have gone to such lengths as to have some basic inventory that they put in a storage unit somewhere, just in case all their all their product is gone, and then they have to sit there and figure out how do I get that replaced. So equipment, machinery, vehicles, just things for you to think about. What if? What if that happens? And what if my office is no longer workable? Then where do we go? You can set up a backup for that. That recovery location, I mentioned again several times about the computers and other critical equipment that you have. If you had to replace it, could you? And if you did replace it, whether it's any of that equipment there, whether it's communications or computers, is it secure too? Will it work? And just any other miscellaneous resources. So there's several checklists there on pages 9 through 13 about how you can capture all that sort of information and then think about what would we do. Number 8, try and ensure that everybody who works with you understands the importance. This is something that gets incorporated in an employee handbook, orientation for new employees. And gosh, if you have people coming and going, the tendency is, well, maybe we'll sit down next month and then that turns into next year. And some people may not know, A, that there's a plan, and B, how important that is. So it's really vital that it's a constant vigilance on your part to communicate that to folks, to make sure they understand how important it is. And I'll talk a little bit more about updating the plan and testing it for people. Very simple things that can be done, with a tickler on your calendar. Number 9, at least once a year, twice a year, test the plan out. And that last slide gives some examples of that, because you do have either turnover or lack of a communication. If you don't repeat it to people over and over and communicate, A, this is very important to you as well as to us, and B, to help them to remember these sorts of things, because again, when a disaster happens, our brains get sort of scrambled, and a lot of times we're not thinking clearly. So having this in place and giving copies to folks of the plan so they know this is what can happen. And then also, if you have anything major in company changes, policy changes, new key suppliers, key employees, that sort of thing, that everything is really clear and up to date. Simple to do if you have it on a computer where you can update those records easily. So what it's recommended is to hold regular practices. I remember when my 2 kids were young, we used to do, one of those fire drill things. And what did they do? And, and they were 3, 4, 5 years old, and we were drilling in it. Okay, here's how you get down the steps, and there's where you go out front to meet us. It's at the mailbox. We talked about that over and over, probably once a month till they got old enough to know it. And it's the same with employees, and it's the same with yourself, to make sure that you don't have to read it to know what needs to be done. And it's the same with them. Where do we meet? What if somebody isn't there? Then what do we do? Were they there? I talked earlier about making sure you know where people are within the building. So those are some things that need to be done. So that regular drills, it can be a 5-minute process. It's not like it takes a half a day. Another one is a real-life scenario where you take something that has happened somewhere else and then apply it to your organization. Say, if that were to happen, would we be ready? What could we do? How would we react? And then you can also take it to the next level where you actually simulate. You make up something and say, let's put the plan in place and see what actually happens. And then taking it to the last extreme, which is, okay, we're going to say that a disaster did happen. The plan is, if you can't get to work, you work from home, you remote in on your desktop, your laptop, and you use your cell phones. Let's see if that really can work. Let's do that for a day, a half an hour, and see if it really can work, or are there going to be some problems. And that's where you find out where I thought I was supposed to do this, and I found out, after the fact that didn't work because I didn't have the most up-to-date information to log in to remotely to my desktop at work. So those are things that you can do to see, does this work or not? And if not, then we'll update it and fix it. So really, I guess at that point, take the workbook and this handout here, some really good information that I want to emphasize that's on a website called ready, ready.gov. It's a government site that has a lot of this data. The American Red Cross also has a lot of this information. And in fact, both of them, and as well as FEMA and Homeland Security all came up with a series of checklists. So you can go to ready.gov or American Red Cross and be able to get even more detailed information if you're interested. This is a great starting point. It won't be an end-all for everything with any type of disaster situation, but it's a great jump start to that process. Any questions? Yes, sir. There you go.
On TV. Is you don't want to give up coverage for a savings. Most of you probably have an agent. You want to make sure and that's a good company, regardless of which company, all of these companies are good companies. They've all been around a long time. State Farm, Allstate, they all are. You want to meet with your agent. If you own a business or even a home-based business, you want to make sure that home-based business is covered under your homeowner's policy. You want to make sure that the coverage is adequate. Price is great. It's great to hear, hey, I'm going to save 10% or 20% or whatnot. But it's not a good deal if you save money and you give up coverage. Even for you all who don't own businesses for your employees, you want to advise them, they probably want to get their personal lines checked up every 2 years. Every year for commercial, every 2 years for personal. The reason for that is if you drive to Eastern Kentucky, to say Salyersville, West Liberty, those towns, you will see homes that were not adequately insured. There is a very nice home right at the end of the Mountain Parkway that is cut in half. Why? Because they did not have enough coverage. They looked at price, that was it. Turned out they added insured for $100,000. The replacement cost was about $300,000. Needless to say, use your common sense, what happened? They didn't get the money they needed to rebuild. It's a very serious thing. So as Michael mentioned, make sure you meet with your agent at least once a year on commercial lines, at least once every 2 years on personal. And if you can't meet with your agent or your agent won't meet with you, look for another agent.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
And he's absolutely right. I mean, we see this. We are the national leader in fire and water mitigation in the country, and we see this time and time again. You come into somebody's home and, they lack the coverage that it takes in order to, do the cleanup, to do the restoration to, to their home or business. But I just, wanted to elaborate on something Mr. Ashcraft had said earlier about, being ready for, catastrophe. Most generally, people don't think about these things until it happens. Something the ServPro is doing is we have an emergency ready profile. I had some brochures. I try to pass them out to some people. It's something we're doing free of charge. We're not making any money doing this, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring this readiness program to the people of Nicholasville, to the businesses of Nicholasville, because as a community, we do not want to lose one single business due to a disaster, due to fire or water. Here's one good question, and then I won't stand up here for 5 minutes and talk, but I could go on and on and on about what you see in the business as far as people losing homes and business, but how many people in here know where their emergency water shutoff is in their office?
Yeah.
Very little. And that's something that we do in our emergency ready profile. He's absolutely right. When you go on, what ServPro has now is we have an app. Yeah, there's an app for that. We have an app on our phone. You can sync that in not only to the computer, but you're going to have a paper copy, you're going to have a computer, you're going to have it on your phone, you can have an app. And, the real question is where the emergency shutoff does, Becky in accounting know where the emergency shutoff is. The people that you leave your business, your livelihood Two, do they know where those emergency places are? And one of those real brief things that we do is we'll take pictures of those places. You know, we organize all of those phone numbers for you in one place, so that way everyone in your business has access to those things. And it's something that, like I said, it's free of charge. We'll come to your business, we'll come to your home, we'll set those things up for you, and you know, hopefully we'll never have to use those things, but we'll be glad to do it. Call your local Nicholasville ServPro. I have business cards here with our phone number on them.
It's, you know, it's good, but I wouldn't rely just on that. You know, it's actually great. The odds are it's much safer, but you never know. I've heard of some situations where people thought that it was being stored and backed up somewhere else, found out when they went to they needed it, and the company didn't have it. So there are situations, again, where if you assume that there's one way to do it that'll be secure and you don't need any other backup, that's when you get in trouble. I would, you know, again, you can store it in the cloud, but I would also have key files either on a disk and or flash drives where you don't rely just on them. Because I've heard some horror stories where and most of them are very reputable, but there could be situations. One company was just negligent and just didn't invest in upgrading of their equipment, and people were paying on contract to get all that stored, and then when some of them needed it, it's just not there. So it caused some real issues.
I can testify with everything he's saying. About 8 years ago, some friends of mine opened up a satellite retail store in Florida, and we did an SBA seminar to learn how to protect our company. About 2 months after opening, we were hit with a Category 3 hurricane and another Category 3 hurricane right after it. And if it wasn't for implementing this plan, we would have gone out of business like everybody else did. We were able to stay in business, and in our first year of business, we broke $1 million. So this is amazing tactics to help ensure the livelihood of your company.
Anybody else? All right, join me in thanking Michael for sharing this information.
Thank you.
Stay right there. Okay, important stuff. This is very important. Michael is going to be emailing us information to the chamber. He has some handouts here. Yep. If those will go quickly, he'll be emailing that information to us as well. So if you have questions about what you've heard or seen today, know that the Chamber of Commerce will have those resources available. Michael is always available as well. He is a phone call away if you all would like to have him come speak to your business, or if there's questions that you have on a personal level for your home, he'll be able to help you with that as well.